Well, fortunately, right now for us, classic hits music is doing quite well right across North America. So we're kind of in a golden period. I don't exactly know the secret formula why, but I have a few thoughts. Vinyl has made a comeback, and I'm thinking, a lot of kids. You go to the Value Village, the Goodwill stores, the secondhand stores, and you'll see younger generations picking out the vinyl. And I've actually been in a spot where I'm kind of like, is he going to take that thing? I hope not. But I think it's because they're rediscovering all of the greatness that came with listening and sitting back and experiencing vinyl, and in the same process, discovering how awesome it was. So I think that's had a little bit to do with it. I think commercial advertisement, again, is responsible for the resurgence of it. A lot of 80s movies, Hot Tub Time Machine, just to throw reference to that, they go back to the 80s. And I think it's and the other thing is the sampling that a lot of the new music does also channels the 80s music. So people are hearing these things, Glee, for example. They're watching the show, and then the parents are going, no, that's not a new song. That's an old song, as a matter of fact. And then the parents would, let the kids experience that music in its original state. And with any luck, the kids are going, wow, this really is good. Glee isn't on the air anymore, but we're still playing the music that they featured in the show. So I think there's a few factors that are making it cool again. Everything, makes its circles, makes its comebacks. And right now, 80s and 70s, 80s, 90s music is doing that for at least Boom 97.3 in Toronto. So thank goodness. For the most part, the 80s music, a lot of people wanted to try something new, be different, hence some of the freaky hairdos that you'd see, hair bands, you name it, different clothes, wild. Everybody wanted to stand out and be absolutely different. Ziggy Stardust, for example, I know that's 70s, but you had to find that niche to try and be different, to make sure you make an impression. MTV was big as well, because that gave bands a venue to say, this is who we are, check us out, let's be wild, let's be crazy. A lot of the time, people just shot shit that had nothing to do with the video whatsoever, but they just wanted to be outlandish and memorable. And yeah, MTV certainly survived for a little while, but then, like most things, they evolved. So it was a lot of, let's be different, let's stand out, let's see what we can do that nobody else has done before, and make it our own. In our station format, we have 70s, 80s, 90s. We play artists from the 90s that are similar to some of the sounds from the 70s and 80s. Oasis, for example, Nirvana. They've got that rootsy kind of vibe, that feel, that freedom, that energy, that talent, the songwriting process. So I think it's just a matter of the listener evolving, You've got somebody that grew up listening to 70s music. They're getting older, but, hey, I still like those guys.
How did Tom Scholz record More Than a Feeling?
A great example of a studio album, and one that changed the music industry, was Boston and More Than a Feeling. And it's one guy in a studio layering and layering and layering. I think there's 7 guitars that he's got on the album, and then and the drums and all of that nonsense. But it sounds fantastic. And it was that album that made other groups like Foreigner, like Journey, go, holy shit, look what this guy can do. We got to do that. It was kind of he created a new formula. But it was just one guy in a studio doing it the old school way. Lost are the days where you get a bunch of people in a studio, in a house, or wherever the place may be, that are recording an album. It was a community sort of vibe. You'd be locked in this place for days trying to pump out some stuff. As frustrating as it is that I hear from artists when they talk about that, it's also kind of a lost art now, in that you can just record your little bit, leave, and that stuff's saved on a hard drive somewhere. So, it's handy in an editing kind of way. You don't have to, live there for a month or 2 months or however long it takes. You can just record your piece and then scoot. So, I think the computer technology is good, and it's also kind of takes away from the whole experience, that whole lost roots of creating an album, a classic album. I think there's a big positive to the internet. It's exposure. It's like free marketing. Somebody wants to know
hey, what was that song by The Who? Or what was that song by Led Zeppelin that I heard on that TV show? You go to the internet and you look up the episode, you find out what the soundtrack was, or so on and so forth, or movie soundtracks. So it opens up a whole new era, of potential buyers. And with the amount of commercials that are using songs that we're familiar with, I've, Lord knows how many times I've said, where have I heard that song before? There it is. Oh, it's those guys. Chorus. So it's a great marketing tool if you're a band of any genre.
Could a band exist today that was like Guns N' Roses and Aerosmith? I think so. I think what a band should do would be to study the classics, to study what these bands did and how they pulled it off, on stage as well as outside of the stage. What were their quirks? What did they do to essentially piss off the media or give the fans, have them wanting more? I think if a band, obviously they have to be talented musicians, they got to write, they got to produce, they got to own all their stuff. And then if they can study the classic rockers and the ones that they really, really look up to, I think, they could possibly pull it off. But there's so many different factors now today. You've got social media. You've got, obviously, different styles of radio stations coming up rather than your regular AM and FMs. You've got your online radio stations now. So they need to find a way. There's a lot of studying. They would take every ounce of that media exposure and use it to their advantage and create something mythical, if you will. So I think they could. It's just a matter of who's it going to be and when's it going to happen.
Do you think that there could be another Led Zeppelin for the new generation? What would they have to do?
I think there is. That's tough. That's a tough question, though. Led Zeppelin was Jimmy Page's brainchild. Here's this session player who, was kicking ass and everybody was bringing him in. And he said, I'm tired of doing what everybody else wants to do. I want to do what I want to do. So you need somebody that's going to, have that genesis of a thought and go, what, let's make a kick-ass. Let's do some research. Let's figure out what made these guys successful, or what did these guys. You can take all these different elements of different successful rock bands, and of course passion is a huge part of that, and talent and timing. So if you can market yourself and get enough people and passion and support, then I think totally you could do it. There isn't really any good super groups that are still around, with the exception maybe of U2, Rolling Stones, obviously, but they're getting older. So, who is going to be that super group? Classic rock has so many different influences on it. It's got the country vibe, Leonard Skinner. It's got the bluesy vibe, Led Zeppelin. It's got the hard rock kind of punky feel, which is The Who. So it's got so many different elements in it.
People still believe in the power of rock and roll music.
Hey, thanks for watching. My name is Daniel Sarkisian. I'm an independent filmmaker from Toronto.